So we've talked about promises, we've talked about philosophies, we've talked about psychologies, we've talked about some proficiencies, and we've talked about purpose. So now where we are is process P. And the process P means the money process, like how we process our money in our marriage. So this is the money word. And we're going to do some money work today with our honeys, or just on our own, in our own books individually. So process is what I'm calling in the book. That's basically the Falling for Money book is the money process. Now, if you spend any time with me, nothing stays the same very long. So I'm always evolving and iterating. And I think that's another lesson, is that I think we think here's the starting place and here's the destination, and to get there as quickly as possible, which certainly there's some truth to that. But again, when we're so destination focused, we miss the journey. We miss the love of the process. We miss the iterations. And I think life is iterative. It's just, it's like computer programming now. We used to, programmers used to try to build the entire database, the entire system they were going to sell in one fell swoop. But now everything's iterative. You just build a little bit and do that, and then iterate and, evolve and add on and learn and adjust as you go along. So to me, that's life. Life's an iteration. And it's enjoying the iteration. And what to be iterative means, what that means is you have to fail a lot. You have to test a lot. So you have to get really good at being okay with failing. I mean, I probably fail 100 times to have one success. And it's like, okay, now the only time failure is not a good thing is when you don't use it to iterate, to make a change, to make an adjustment, to question, well, that didn't work, I wonder why. And I think that's even where Tamara, she may or may not agree with this, but I think I can say this would be true for her, is when she came into the entrepreneurial world, that's what was most difficult for her. Because I'm like, oh, that didn't work, no big deal, we'll try something else. And she's like, ah. And I'm like, so what? We, spent 20 grand on that. It didn't work. She's like, that's $20,000. But that's just it. Like, nope, not that. Nope, not that. No, oh, this is, it's working, it's going. And so that takes us into a word called flow. Now, flow is another thing I've learned. Like before I didn't even get flow. It was too woo-woo. I'd heard the topic. And to me, flow now is everything. My life is about flow. So before it's get shit done, this order, sequence, tackle it, to-dos, do it faster, not good enough, do it again, not perfect. There we are. We're not there yet. When are we going to get there? Another to-do list, task list, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, And nothing necessarily wrong with that, other than it was just very militant and determined and get it done. And I mean, can you see my face? Just talking about it. And I think that's where my frown marks come in, is because people are like, are you angry? I'm like, no, not at all. I'm really happy. And they're like, really, your face isn't showing it. And now it's not. Now, I mean, that's like boom, 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 boom. And now my life is so much different, and it really is far more joyful and happier. And it's just because I really work to be in a state of flow. And life flows now, and it's not predictable. Like I try to set everything predictable and enforce things and put them in my order and structure because it seemed very safe that way. And very determined and predictable. Flow, energy, momentum, rapids, slow, ups, downs, sideways. And what can rivers do that have flow? What can they do to canyons, to rocks? The Grand Canyon, you think that river completely created that thing. And so I think the universe is flow. The rivers flow. The whole system flows. It's just in motion. The universal energy is in motion all the time, way beyond what we as human beings can see or figure out. But I just invite you all to really move, maybe, since we're all type A, most of us, and that's just, we're sort of built that way. So it takes a lot of letting go as type A's, OCD, control freaks, get it done, get towards the, destination as fast as possible, to kind of let it go and let some flow happen. Now, it doesn't mean woo-woo. So what I don't mean is like people that are too far into flow, then their life doesn't turn out because they're not in action, they don't have strategy, they don't have destinations, purposes, and plans, and the things we talked about in that other piece. So that's still necessary, but don't let that be the purpose. Is like, remember, that's just we have to be in these things, but to go with the flow. Be able to, wow, I didn't know we were going to take a right turn there, but I'm going to go right. I'm going to let this carry me and see. So flow is just, it's an energy. We want things to flow. I think life is better when it flows. So what does that have to do with money? Part of what I've worked to design and what Gary and I do is what I'm going to teach you next and how we flow our money. So the way I'm trying to invent this and change it is again, I think what you'll see is a lot of what we're bringing to you is like non-mainstream, non-traditional. It's very much the new science, the new medicine, the new things we're learning, new brain stuff, everything I'm just bringing you. If you stick with me, I'm just a seeker. I'm out there learning from the best of the best, from the best experts I can find or I have relationships with, and I want to bring them to you. So stick with me. I'm just going to keep bringing the best of who I know. I'm not the expert, but I'm surrounding myself by those who are wealthy, right, in all these categories. So with everything, it's like trying to it's about inventing a new way of being, a new way of thinking, a new way that matches more of what we know now versus being caught in old traditions. So a little bit of my short part, my short duration of real estate fame is what I was known as an innovator, was a disruptor, as a thought leader, I guess. That's sort of a trendy term, whatever that means. But in the real estate, I was sort of breaking the old way of the traditional real estate industry. And I just because it didn't make sense. Well, a lot of money in the study of this hasn't made sense. And I have an accounting degree, and I worked for Coopers and Lybrand, and so, I have some background there. And the way we were taught, though, and a lot of the study I've done since then, it's about this very contained way of moving your money and very financial planner and very dry and old school. And there's elements of that, like the fundamentals are true, but the way it's taught and spoken, I think, is about restraint and constriction and putting things in these budgets. And it makes us feel bad about money because, we're trying to restrict and not spend and not do this. And I think it really sort of fuels some of our psychology we have with money and can get in the way of relationships. And it's maybe a more traditional way of doing money that was based on check registers and the old ways people had to do money before we had computers. So in the new way of money, the way I'm sort of inventing this based on the way I'm seeing it and just based on where I am in my life, I'm just bringing who I am to this, is thinking money differently. So thinking of it in budgets and constriction and restraints and put it this way. And I want it to be money is a source of flow. So the goal moving forward is as we go into this process, I want us to think of money a couple different ways. I want you to think of money as flow. Money is great flow. And so the goal, we don't want to budget our money. We want to flow our money. We don't want to budget into a box. We want to flow it in the different directions we want it to go. We want to flow. We want it to build. And then think of flow. Think of rivers. What happens when you start getting the momentum going and think of the energy. So money's the same way. Once it starts flowing and starts building, it just compounds and it builds, but only if we flow it. Now, sometimes we're doing that based on some traditional ways, but I want to reshape our mindset a little bit about how we flow our money and how we approach it, especially how we use it in our relationships. So think of money as flow. And what we're going to talk about then are these 5 parts. So the first part of our new system, we're going to talk about money, the money method, is the first part is be raw. And what raw stands for is the reflection and assessment of our wealth and wealth. Well, you've already done that. That really is the 7 F words. But before we start talking about money, what we want to know is what is that wealthy life we're after, so that as we start flowing our money, we know why we're flowing it. What's the purpose? So this is the purpose of our money. Remember, the money's not the end. This is the end. The rest is just the means. So that's the raw. The second piece is what we're calling Get Kissed. And that's, this is called our cash flow income saving and spending system. So this is like a new word for budget. So this is a cash flow system versus a budgeting system. And that's what I'm going to teach you now. With memorization, what we're working to do is part of my own memory technique based on what I'm learning is to change things to make them memorable. So the seven F words. Well, F words, I can remember 7 F words, and I've got my ways to remember those. Cash flow is boring, but if we do cash flow with the first letter of my name, I can remember this more. And I can remember the order of these and the 5 steps and this and that. So be okay, again, for those of us that are very pragmatic and real and predictable, some of this can be very difficult. I'm not the most creative person in the world. And so, but I'm trying to get better at that, to make things memorable, to make things stand out. And especially with businesses, you want things memorable, right, to customers, and they can remember, and you want to be a little bit unique and different without being too clever and where it gets to the point of being ridiculous to others. It's okay to be ridiculous in your own mind, just not necessarily outwardly. So that's why it's K with cash, so we'll remember it. So the first part is called cash flow chart. And we can look at this 2 different ways. It can be cash flow chart or cash flow chart. So as a cash flow chart, it's the new name for like a budget, for the tool for a budget. And it's very simple, but what we're going to start doing is we're going to organize our money in a very specific way. So this is the cash flow system or the KISS system. It's organizing how we're going to start organizing our money so we can flow it very specifically. So it's a very specific system that I'm teaching you. It may work for some of you, may work for most of you, it may not work for all of you. But at least you can see this system so you can see how you might be able to incorporate at least elements of it into your own life and marriage and how you do your books. So the cash flow chart is these are the different parts. So it starts with our gross cash. So our gross cash inflow, which is basically our income. But income's a boring word. What does income mean? Revenue is a boring word. What does revenue mean? So, but can we all think of lots of cash inflow versus revenue? Like think of cash. Do we want a lot of cash inflowing? Income's boring. So increase your income. Cash, and so here's the visualization technique. Let's imagine cash flowing, incoming, just piling in. It's flowing in. Think of rivers of cash flowing in. That's even better, floating on rivers of cash. So cash flow. So cash flow, our gross cash inflow, which is all our income coming in. Now the first thing, do we get to keep all the cash we make? We don't, do we? So good old Uncle Sam gets Uncle Sam's cash. Now, for many of us that are in a corporate job, that's taken off automatically. For those of us that are business owners and entrepreneurs, what do? We have to set it aside. Now, part of the reason why I had $100,000 of tax liens, in my early career, is I didn't do that. I just spent all of this. So Uncle Sam gets paid first. That's what Uncle Sam gets, and so that goes. So that's a cash outflow. Now, the second idea here is we need to pay ourselves second. So where most people get themselves in trouble is they're waiting to invest what's left over. Most of us in this room, that's not the case, but it comes out here as part of the cash flow chart. This is how the chart, it's a very, taxes first, investment second. And what that leaves us is what we call spending cash. So spending cash. Now, spending cash means spending cash. This means we get to spend 100% of what's below that line. So this is about spending. This is a spending plan. We're taking our investments off. Now we get to spend. Who likes to spend? Spending's good. Now, we're going to leave this here for now. I'm going to talk about how we spend this cash and how we categorize this here next. But this is basically the cash flow chart. We take our cash inflow minus our taxes minus our investments gives us our spending cash, right? And sort of the goal here will be to net out zero. Now the money, the spending cash we put, just for later so we know, it's called a home operating account. I'm sorry, my writing's so bad. So all this money practically will flow into this, and we're talking household here, we're not talking business, although business works very similarly. But we flow this into a checking account, which we call our home operating account. So all of our income comes in. We're going to talk later where we flow our taxes. We're going to talk later where we flow our investments. This is above the line, and then we're going to talk below the line. So I'm just giving you some description here so that you know what we're talking about moving on. Okay, but all this money now is going to sit in a home operating account for later use. Does this make sense to everyone? Pretty simple? Again, I am making this so simple. Number one, I'm not the smartest person in the world, so the simpler the better. But also, I think we complicate our lives way too much. And I think sometimes we get satisfaction out of it being more complex. We feel better about ourselves. I did that, and I'm so over it. Like, I want things to be as simple as possible. They just flow and they're simple so that when I do need to use my brain power, I've got it. I don't want to waste any more time on stuff that doesn't matter. I've done a lot of study on decision fatigue. Have y'all learned about that at all and read some about it? So some of the latest science, what we're learning is that our brains really, any given day, we only have so much energy. And our brains take a lot of our energy day to day. And so really to simplify it, it's like we get so many energy points a day. And decision making takes a lot of energy. So what happens is we spend so much of our time making decisions. But most of our time is making decisions on what doesn't matter. So before I cleaned out my closet, I'm beginning so simplified that I usually wear Lululemon to work most days. I'll go to a meeting with a billionaire for coffee, my friend who's the ex-CFO, like the past CFO of Dell, and he's a good friend of mine. And I go to a coffee meeting at Starbucks in my Lululemon. And he doesn't seem to have a problem with it, right? It's like my rules. I'm going to do this my way. I'm very confident in my Lululemon. Like, I don't have to dress up anymore. But it's not about that. It's about before I did this, I'd go to my closet, what would I do? And I'm not good with makeup and clothing and everything anyway, so to me it's just overwhelming. But I have this full closet, all those rods there, all those rods there, and all those rods there, and all those shoes down there. And I'm like, what the fuck? What do I wear today? And I hate deciding what I'm going to wear. So what's the first thing I'm thinking of is, I hate this shit. What am I going to wear today? Right? Now, some people love putting it all together. I suck at it, and I don't wear jewelry. So then what belt should I wear with that? And what shoes? And I'm like, God, just kill me now. So my first thing I'm doing, decision fatigue. I'm using all this brain energy on decisions, like who cares what I wear? Really, sometimes it's important, but most of the time it's not. So for me, it's just one of those things, like I'm taking that decision out. I hired a wardrobe consultant that came in. She took those stuff out. She said, okay, there's this, these things can go together. It takes me 2 minutes to get in and out of my closet every day. Now, I got fake eyelashes. So now I don't even have to put on mascara. 2 minutes can get my clothes. Usually it's out of my drawers, Lululemon. My fake eyelashes are so pretty and long, I don't have to do mascara. Sometimes I put on lip gloss if I'm really, ambitious. I get ready before Gary does every day. Almost. We're pretty much the same time. But the whole idea is that I think we add so much complexity to our lives and so much added drama and so much this. And now I'm so over it. It's like, just simplify. Decision fatigue is real, is what we're learning. I want my decision-making power so when I need it, so that when I do need to decide and it's actually consequential and real, I've got it, right? And I've not wasted all my energy points, all my decision points on stupid stuff. So the goal really is to get pattern, to really make our lives very routine. Like Gary and I don't really decide what we're going to eat every day anymore. Like, it's a salad every single day. Why? Because how much energy did it take to say, okay, what are we going to do for lunch today? Now we have Brenda. Brenda makes our lunches. Now we have Brenda. She makes our dinners. We go home. Gary puts a few things together. Done. Simplification. And it costs a little bit of extra money. But guess what? That's why we do this over here. Simplification. Gary loves to cook. But does he love to cook every single day after being tired from work and we work our asses off? I'd rather him cook when he really wants to and it's meaningful and he's not tired and he puts all this love and goodness in the food, and Brenda does too differently, which is why we hired somebody versus going out to eat every single day. But it's simplifying Gary's life. I just see him be so tired and come home and cook for me and the family because I can't boil an egg. And the kids like, well, I don't like this, I don't like that. And it's like, get rid of the drama, get rid of the frustration, get rid of the extra, and just be, just live, just simplify. So simple. Everything I'm going to teach you today is so simple. And it's so simple and it makes you rich at the same time. Who's up for that? Okay. All right, so that's the cash flow chart. The second part of the system, of the KISS system, is what we call cash flow categories. All right, so I'm going to do a different color here. Oh yeah, we could do cash flow categories. There you go. These markers aren't all that great. Let's see. So cash flow categories. So again, we're going to start out the same. We have our gross cash inflow. We minus our taxes. We minus our investments. And that leaves us what? Our spending cash. Okay, so I said we get to spend all this. Well, some of you might be thinking, well, where's savings and some other stuff in that? So I'm going to teach you a different way to think about savings, is we get to spend to save. So the cool here is this is all about flowing. We're going to start flowing this money. So now we're going to start flowing our spending cash that's left after after all our personal income, and we're going to start flowing it into different categories. So this is really key. I think this is what really makes a difference, especially in marriages, because this becomes part of the agreement, is talking about how we flow. So we're going to spend all of this, and here's how we're going to spend it. The first thing is our ARM. So this is a new word, I made it up. And ARM stands for Annual Required Minimum Expense. This is at the bare minimum, how much does it cost to live our lives every single year? So Annual Required Minimum Expense. So these are required expenses. I'll talk more about these in a second. But these are the have-to spending, meaning it's consequential if you don't pay it. So what's an example of something that if you don't pay it, there's a consequence? A mortgage, right? So you have to pay your mortgage. So your mortgage would be in your ARM. Now, what about these shoes? Probably not so much, right? We wouldn't put that on our ARM. But most of us, when we do our traditional budgeting, we're just putting everything into one thing, and it's just in there, and we're trying to manage it or reduce it, or we're spending too much, whatever it is. But it's very important that when we start flowing our cash, it's very intentional, lots of intentionality, it's flow, but we have to be very precise and specific, and now we know where we're going to flow it into these different categories. So that's the ARM. The second thing we're doing is what we call our luxuries. And this is what's different than traditional budgeting, is we're separating our ARM from our luxuries. Now luxuries, I use the word luxuries for a reason. Again, very intentional. Why would I use the word luxuries here? They're not necessary. We live in a life of luxury in this country. I don't know if you've traveled anywhere else in the world. I've lived in a third world country for over a year. I came back to the States and realized how lucky we are. So we live a life of luxury. So it's so easy that we get used to living in a way that we think these luxuries are required because we get accustomed to this, and it's all mixed up into one budget, so we're not really distinguishing between the two. Well, how we get rich through flowing our money is we start distinguishing the two and being very selective and agreeing on these things that we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's luxuries. The next thing is our savings. We're going to spend to save. So we're going to cash flow, we're going to flow money, we're going to flow cash into savings. It's a whole system, which is a SaaS system, again, that I'll talk about here later on. So it's determining our savings. And then finally, it's debt reduction. That's another system that I'll teach. Now, most of us in the room we don't have personal debt, but if we do, we want to know how this fits in. But it's important because I'll show you how it all goes together. So that's it. That's the cash flow categories. Is we have the above the line categories and we have below the line. But we're going to spend everything month to month. Now, it never nets out really zero. You'll see that. But the idea is sort of more of an idea that you're looking at spending 100% of what you make every year and 100% of any month. But here's the final key to this. You're going to spend a certain percentage of your spending cash. So nothing is off gross income. So this above the line, this is not your money. So this is the big key here. Is Uncle Sam's money your money? No. Not if you want to stay out of jail. So investments, the way to think about investing and the way we think about it is your investments it's not your money. Why not?
Access it.
Here's the reason why. It's not your current self's money. It's your future self's money. Because we're going to have this future self 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, and our future self is going to need some income. So let's say 25 years from now, our future self is going to say, thank you, current self way back then. You did such a great job of taking care of me. So this is not your current self's money. This is Uncle Sam's money. We pay Uncle Sam first. We pay our future self second. It's not our money. So just like the stuff that comes off our paychecks that we never see, that's not our money, that goes to taxes or go whatever, we think of it like the mindset here is exactly the same. So you don't even think about it. It's not your money. It's just off somewhere, wherever we put it, for our future self. And then that becomes a whole different game and a whole different level. It's a whole different conversation for investment.